Welcome to the Mental Advantage Podcast. Whether you're an athlete trying to perform at your best when it counts the most, a coach or business leader trying to get more out of your team, or someone looking for more personal growth, this is the place for you. This podcast is your map to guide you to the right mindset, systems, and strategies you need to become the best version of yourself. And now, here's John Cullen and Brandon Allen.
Man, I tell you what, Brandon, I don't know if anybody prepared me for these allergies. I know you had talked about it, but like this whole Nashville thing is crazy. Like,
I told you, listen, it's that it starts earlier, right? And it is different allergies.
Yeah.
Than what you're accustomed to, right? So, yeah. I mean, I want to say that we are, we're just about over it here in Atlanta, from having like that yellow green haze. But there's still some mornings that I wake up and I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to take some.
Yeah, no, it's I don't know what the deal is. I say that, I kind of lay that out there for the listeners so they don't think I've developed some drug habit if they hear me sniffing a lot on the air tonight,
or that you picked up a 7-pack a day smoking.
Yeah, that's true.
Habit with the raspy voice.
I think they like that. They have written in and want more of the raspy voice. So.
Yeah. Really? Have we gotten some extra questions or emails?
That's right. We actually do have a letter from the listener tonight, but
do we?
Yeah, okay. I'll go ahead and read this. So this came in an email from Sydney Wright in Midlothian, Virginia, which is just outside of Richmond. Midlothian.
Is that like when you said where in Virginia? Is it not northern or southern? It's right there.
It's right there outside of Richmond, there in that Midlothian,
right around the Lothian area, kind of the middle of Lothian.
Yes. Now, well, we did have a listener in Midlothian. Now that we just went in on her city.
No, Sydney, come back.
Sydney's like, that's it. I am not listening anymore. Make fun of Midlothian. Yeah, exactly. But so her letter, she says, I enjoy the show, especially the beginning and the end. Ha ha. So Sydney clearly is a listener because she gets the little callback from us always saying that. I really like the idea of behavior recipes that Tyler Pasick talked about when he was a guest on the show. This has helped me with some of my work goals. Keep up the great work. The show keeps getting better and better. So I question maybe some of her listening now that she said that last sentence of the show keeps getting better and better, but we'll take her word for it. But no, Sydney, we do thank you for that. The behavior recipes, I will say this. I've used a lot of that myself after that show. That's probably one of the first times I had heard somebody kind of unpack it just that way. I don't know if I've told this story on this show or not. I've told this story a few times in coaching different teams, and I know you and I have talked about this, but there's a great story, I think, that illustrates behavior recipes about a kid that took, I guess he would have been, this was out in California. This would have been back when you and I were probably still in high school, because it was when the SAT was still like 800 for math, 800 for verbal, the most you could get, total. 1600. That was kind of like the barometer. So this kid, junior in high school, his, not much of a student, really hung out with a crowd that wasn't very studious themselves, and really no direction in life. And the only reason he took the SAT was because he had promised his mom he would take it. And so he goes in and takes the SAT, couple weeks later, he gets his scores back or whenever the scores come in, and he got a 1480 on the SAT. So his counselor, as you would imagine, and the parents and principal and everybody, they call him into the office. They're like, all right, what'd you do? We know you cheated. And he's like, I really didn't cheat. He said, I tried to cheat. I did everything. I was looking over, people's shoulders or whatever. He said, but the way the scan cards are, it was too small of writing. And so I couldn't cheat. So I just took it. And so he goes, I guess I'm just one of those smart kids, So he goes on believing he's just like one of these, like, well, heck, if I'm a smart kid, I might as well start doing stuff that smart kids do. So he started studying better. Right. Starts applying himself. He starts ditches that group of friends that wasn't as directionally oriented as he is now. But he does. He starts studying more and starts getting better grades. The teachers, of course, respond in a favorable way. So he goes on and becomes graduates one of the tops in his classes. He ends up, I would love to tell you, like right away he goes to Harvard or something. He didn't. He went to a junior college, but because he wasn't really sure still whether or not he was going to go to college. So he goes to a junior college, goes there for 2 years, does really, really well, ends up now going to an Ivy League school out of the junior college and does well, graduates with honors from this Ivy League school, goes and gets started with a career as an entrepreneur. He starts his own business and does outstanding. So fast forward about, I don't know, it would have been maybe 10 years or so. They actually do these audits of SAT scores in different states. And so California was one of the states, and I guess it's every however many years. Well, they sent him a letter, and come to find out he did not actually get a 1480 on his, or 1480 on his SAT. He actually had gotten a 780 on his SAT. So big difference from that 1480, big difference from that, but it was really cool because I saw this interview with this guy, and he says, what it was is that everybody thinks that the reason that my life turned around was because I got a 1480 on my SAT score. He said, it's not. He said, the reason my life turned around is I started acting like a 1480 student. And I love that story because it's exactly what made me think of that story was when Sydney mentions Tyler Pazik's appearance on the show, is you just do the behaviors of people that are doing those things that you're trying to achieve. And like she said, look, this is something she's applying to her work goals. It's anybody can do this. You listeners at home, just find out what it is you're after. What's your goal? What are you trying to accomplish? And then start thinking about what's the barometer? What does that person do on a consistent basis that you can duplicate?
Well, and I think John, it is what you just tried to identify the process, right? Because we talk about it a lot where, don't focus on the result. I just had a conversation with my son the other day, and because he's just starting to kind of get into, he wants to get stronger for sports, and we're just kind of getting into working out a little bit. And I said, buddy, look, it's not, don't focus what you put on the bar.
Yep.
Right. Like, especially right now, that will come. You're still young. Like, let your body develop. But you can learn the process of what a good lift looks like. You can learn the process of having explosion in your hips, and then also allowing your body to kind of go underneath a bar for whether it's a clean or a snatch or whatever. And I said, so, focus on setting or understanding the process so you learn the efficiencies required to be successful, right? And that's the thing, John. I think, whether it's Malcolm Gladwell or Tyler, or you've mentioned it several times, whether you want to call it the fake it till you make it or whatever. But at some point in time, it's taking this application of what you've been provided. And even like Dr. Mo said, it's taking what you've learned and actually applying it. That's practice.
Yep.
Right. That is the practice of whatever it is that you're trying to take from whether it's this podcast or a book or whatever it is, and really allowing yourself the opportunity to apply that. And I love it. I love the question.
Yeah.
I think it's great. And
it's smart.
It is. And I encourage the listeners to keep sending those in. But I love to hear that we have people that are taking what you and I kind of put together and thought, hey, this could be really interesting.
Right.
To hear that people are actually using it now. I love that. I mean, that's awesome.
And to Brandon's point, when you are, even if you think, well, I don't really have a question or anything like that, we'd love to hear just those. How those stories like Sydney, how you're just taking information you're finding on the show, because we're just the vehicle. I mean, these guests that we have on are the ones that they really get it. And some of the things, speaking of Dr. Mo, one of the great highlights, two shows in now to that Grand Slam series. It's funny. I noticed that there's certain times I call it a Grand Slam series. I think when I'm writing the show notes that appear on Apple, I might call it the Grand Slam collection. Like it's, but it's Grand Slam. That's all you all need to know. But one of the things about that, and you may have seen this on the Instagram, Mental Advantage Podcast Instagram. If you don't follow that page, Brandon puts a lot of the content on there, does a really good job with that, with putting show clips on there. And the one we used from this past Dr. Mo episode was the one where he talks about, basically there's 4 golf shots. There's this quadrant he talks about is the good shot that has a good result, the bad shot that has a bad result. Then there's that good shot executed the way you want it to that has a bad result. Then there's a bad shot that you just end up getting lucky and have a good result. And he talks about how people respond to, if people respond negatively to that good, bad and bad, good, then that's basically going to set up a situation where they're only going to be happy with 25% of their shots.
Right.
Like I love where he says organically, the bad, and the good, universally, everyone's going to basically respond the same way. Yeah. It's the other two that you're going to have to, figure out. And I was thinking about this, Brandon, because you and I, who don't try and golf as much as, for our own sanity, because we're not that strong. Right. We're not a very strong golfer, as Martin Short would say, and not a very strong swimmer. The great thing about that is
great. Hold on. Don't bury the lead. That's
my favorite SNL.
That is one of the best SNL skits ever.
Synchronized swimming.
Synchronized swimming.
He's like, I'm not a very strong swimmer. He's got his nose plug. That is so great. But you and I are in the business world, and I was thinking about this today is, that can be applied. And I think we talked about this on the show with Dr. Mo, is that same premise can be applied to the business world. I mean, we're both in sales. If you make a bad presentation, and trust me, we've made plenty of bad pitches that we ended up getting the business. And then we've had some home runs where you walk out of there and you're thinking, man, I could not have done that any better. And for whatever reason, they just didn't buy, what we're selling that day.
And sometimes you even get the a client that decides to walk away for whatever reason, or there's a number of things that you just don't have any control over. And I'll tell you an interesting piece to that. So I get a very rare opportunity to play golf yesterday. We're recording this on Monday night, so I get to play on Sunday afternoon, and I hadn't played in a while, and kept telling myself, all right, let's see what you do on bad, good, and good, bad. Like just
try it out.
Instead of worrying about your score, keep more tallies on that than your strokes, and just see like be aware of it, right? Have some intentional focus towards it. Completely different round.
Yeah.
I mean, completely different round because one, and I think even Dr. Mo had said this maybe in the first episode that we had with him. You're not good enough to get mad.
That's right.
Right. So what are you getting upset about? You don't practice. You enjoy it. Go enjoy it. You can hit it around a little bit, have fun. But what a completely different round by embracing that other 50% instead of, and I would even say for me, I was so inconsistent even with that 50% because sometimes good, bad, or bad, good, I would be like, it is what it is. Like, hey,
yeah,
I'm
getting what I put into it.
Right. Or not. And so it was really interesting to play a round of golf that way, having I don't want to say my eyes open, but at least being intentional with that effort and that practice of being grateful to even be out there on a Sunday afternoon, enjoying the company, of my dad and uncle and cousin. So it was good. And it was, just little things like that made a big difference. So, I guess my point is, I think you and I both try to practice, what we hear in here, even, from our guests. So.
Yeah, it reminds me, and I wish I remembered the rest of the acronym, but he talked about the one player he worked with where he just had made a little note to himself to smile more on the course, no matter what happened, is just smile. And Tyler Pazik had a great post about this yesterday where he was talking about acting changes everything. And he was, it's actually from, there was some information he was sharing from Trevor Moad's book, It Takes What It Takes, with people who have heard us talk about that before. But he was just saying how, like, right now, as you hear this, just smile and just think about what a difference that makes for you from a overall attitude perspective, just making that smile. And thinking about, like, if your first instinct after a bad shot or whatever the case would be when you're out there is remember, it's a game, have fun. Like, I remember coaches always saying this when I was growing up, and I never really, because we're all in that mindset, like ultra competitive, like, oh no, it makes me mad if we're not doing good. But think about how important it is just to remember it's a game, like just go play, have fun having that game. So that's something to think about. Speaking of labels, I want to read something to you a little bit. I'm not going to read this whole thing, but I know you and I are both fans of the Daily Stoic. And one of the things today's was really, really good. And I wanted to share it with the listeners, a couple blurbs of it, but I also wanted to get your take on this. So it was the first thing that they talk about on here is they say the thing about most things we label as bad, because this was all about labeling and how, like you said, at the end of the day, we're the ones who are fixing labels to things. So the thing about most things we label as bad is that they aren't. They just are. And then they go on to say a virus isn't evil and economic depression isn't malicious. They are unfeeling, indifferent, inhuman events. Their impact on humans, unfortunately, is not quite so neutral, but the fact remains they are things that just are. And then this is great. He says the Stoics remind us it's our opinion about these events that is not neutral either. It is the mechanism that labels them as good or bad, horrible or unfair, tragic or historic. Is that supposed to be comfort to someone who has lost their job or someone they loved? No. No amount of semantics can explain away a death toll or mend a broken heart. But let's go back to the idea of the economy for a second. People who actually work in the market are much less concerned with whether the market is good or bad. They know their job is to work with it as it is, no matter what it is, every single day. They know they have to adapt to what is happening and make the most of it, struggle on and keep going. I really like this because I think this is one of those things that when I read this, I thought if more people can get better, and you hit on this earlier with this show, is our show is all about people taking the information, the preparation, as Mo would say, that they're acquiring the knowledge and then putting it into practice. This is one of those things, if you can understand that, good, bad, or indifferent, you're the one labeling that. Just like we've talked about before, that sensation, physiological sensation before a big game or something that we label as nerves could also be labeled as excitement if we wanted to. Sure. But more importantly, though, I think we can all get around that, our heads around that. But the next step to that, though, is understanding you just have to deal with it, though. Like, no matter what, whether it's bad, good, whatever, you're going to have those things that come to you, and you're going to have those things that are happening. And it's just like, how am I going to deal with it, taking it for what it's worth, and then moving on, just kind of dealing with it and moving on, and understanding tomorrow is going to offer me just as many different things that I'm labeling tomorrow.
Yeah. And so first, I'm glad you didn't read the whole thing, if that was just a part of it.
Yes.
Because it's only a 40-minute show. No, but you and I talk about this kind of off the podcast a good bit, about just where does your value lie, right? And as a parent, if we're going to talk about the sports piece of it, does your value really lie in the success of your child on an athletic field, or does your success as a parent really not show itself until your child is grown and they start making those decisions, for themselves, and you start seeing how they operate as a functioning adult and a member of society, right?
Yeah.
I forget, there was a comedian at one time, and it kind of hits home with me, because I agree with it. My job as your parent is to society, not to you as my child, because I'm going to love and nurture and teach you the lessons that I think are important. But I have a role too to society to not let loose 3 assholes to the world. Like, I want you to be empathetic. I want you to understand you're not the only one in the room. I want you to understand that, and it's kind of like being a team member, right? I mean, if you've ever been a part of a good team, there is value in other people's success, not yours. Your success, if you are helping your teammates, if you're helping people be successful on their own, if you're fostering that, the team is going to succeed. And I promise you, you get it back. Yeah. Right? You get that back. And that doesn't matter if it's on a sports team, business team, a relationship with the person that you love. If you're pouring into them, they will give back. And whether you want to call it labeling or whatever, those are the things that make you who you are. Those are the things that should hold value, because those are real, tangible things, not the value of money that fluctuates because someone's worried about this, that, or the other. Not some of the other things, right? It's those things that are important.
Your comments reminded me of one of my favorite things I've seen on social media was the poster that was outside of some baseball complex somewhere, and it said, whether your son goes 3 for 3 today and hits 3 home runs and has 2 or 3 great plays in the field or whatever, all of that's no reflection on you as a parent. But whether or not your son's a good teammate, listens to the coach, respects the umpires, whatever, that is a direct reflection on you. That's right. That's where we have to get our standards correct, and that understanding that, this whole thing that we have right now in society is how successful our kids are in sports is not necessarily indicative or reflective of our job as a parent. And the other thing you said that's really important, and I want people to understand this, is how important labels are. I think it's really important that when you're dealing with parenting, that you're always letting your child know up front. It's always about the performance. It's not about the performer. I'm not going to talk to you. You're not going to have those conversations with your child. It makes it like personal to where they feel like attacked or that they're letting you down because they didn't do something a certain way or whatever. It should be about, now, if you want to say to them, hey, I thought you could have executed more effort on that particular, in that particular inning or during this ball game, whatever the case would be, that's better than you saying you're lazy.
For sure. And I think this is where for me in particular, I don't want to put words in your mouth. I want the listeners though to understand this is coming from me as a hyper, what I would consider a hyper competitor. I am, as I've gotten older, it is toned down a little bit, but when I tell you I want to compete and I want to win and I will find a way that's in my control to do those things, that I'm not trying to say that those things aren't important. I don't think you're trying to say that those things aren't important, right? I mean, even our faith talks about, running the race and winning.
Right.
And there's so I want to make sure the listeners don't go, oh, well,
yeah,
what are we doing this for?
Right.
Like,
yeah.
Blah, blah, like that's not what we're saying. But if you as a parent want to see your child to succeed, if you want the opportunity as their parent to see them play, the optive word there, to play in more games, then you have to embrace and you have to give them a culture that fosters them playing more.
Right.
Right?
Yep.
It's always funny to me and ironic that the people that put the most importance on the winning at an early age or not focusing on that development, right? Going back to what we were talking about earlier, laying that foundation. And they put all of the importance into winning. More times than not, those are the first kids that when they have an opportunity to stop playing, they're done.
Absolutely.
They're done.
Absolutely. 100%. I've seen it happen when I was a high school coach. There was a group of players that were, when they were younger, were very, very involved in travel, like way ahead of the game with everybody, from probably third grade. I'm talking really young. And they got really involved in it. We're 24/7. It seemed like, all the time, playing from March until early fall, whatever the case may be. Fast forward 10 years or whatever the case may be. And I'm sitting on a bucket at a game as a high school coach with one of these players next to me. And I notice out there on a team we're playing that one of the last remaining players from this travel team was no longer present on the team we were playing. And I make the comment to this player and I said, wow, I just realized that there's only like 2 players from your team that was this ultra competitive like team that was, going all over the country. It seemed like from the third grade on, that only 2 of y'all are still playing. And I will never forget what he said. He said, Coach, that's because we had more baseball by the time we were 12 years old than most people have in a lifetime, or whatever the case. And it's true. It's like there is such thing as too much of a good thing. And to echo what Brandon's saying, trust me, you're talking about 2 ultra competitive people. I mean, I've gotten plenty of dirty looks at family reunions and they're like, hey,
let me tell you something. We have an Easter kickball game for the family. When we go to the beach as a family, there are some pretty intense volleyball games where yes, there are absolutely names called and people are called out. And so it does matter, but I think it's, within the proper context and age appropriateness of the kids and understanding that, if you put too much value on something, and when that child has an opportunity to rebel, like everyone that I've ever seen has done, one of the first things they're going to do is, all right, well, if I'm going to push my boundaries a little bit, if I'm going to do this stuff, some of this stuff I really didn't love anymore. So I get to choose where there's value in my life. I get to choose those things. This thing is gone. I'm cutting it out. I don't want it anymore. That was for mom. That was for dad. That was not for me. And now I'm gonna put my label or my value on what I feel.
Absolutely.
Versus the complete opposite, where you get an opportunity to go, you know what? I really enjoy this not because mom and dad are making me do it, but because of how I feel and how being able to compete, what that allows me to do, right?
Yeah.
What also that brings into my life in terms of, as a competitor, an opportunity to fail, an opportunity to grow and to learn. And again, all of these things that sound, when you talk about them like this in a context of a podcast, sound kind of kumbaya-ish and hey, let's all get together. But in the context of sport, where you have to grind and you have to sweat and you have to give of yourself and make some really tough decisions on, am I going to work out or am I going to that party? Yeah. Am I going to get better or am I going to watch YouTube? Am I going to do this or am I going to go get on the Xbox? Those are things that in a young child's life, those are really big decisions. And this affords that. And so when you can foster an environment that they want to continue to do that, you got to do it. But
yeah, make it about development, make it about the discipline of doing so, make it about, to go full circle here with this, is behavior recipes. Like if you want your child to be that, hey, I want them to be a all-state caliber player when they're in high school or whatever, then you need to start having a conversation is, what do all-state caliber high school players do consistently from a behavior standpoint that that you can duplicate now, that's going to close the gap from where you are and where you want to be?
But more importantly, how do you plant the seed for them?
Right.
Want to be
the motor. Yeah, no question about it.
You can't do it.
Yeah. And that's where you have to really make it about the behavior, that not the behaviors, but the performance, like I say. And really if you want to give feedback, and we both agree you should, like neither Brandon and I, or neither one would ever suggest that it's like, oh, every time they come off field, great job, honey. Yeah. That was so super, whatever. But you need to pick, first of all, your moments for that, but then you also need to make sure you're always making it about the performance, because if they think it's personal, in an attack on them, but you got to make it about what you're observing from a behaviors and performance standpoint. So good discussion on that. We're going to have another great discussion this week with our guest, Dayna Charbonneau, who's the director of clinical and sports psychology at West Virginia University. Actually, you could probably tell this with Charbonneau, but she's a native of London, Ontario, Canada. So really looking forward to that conversation with her. She's going to talk about all kinds of things. Really, one of the things, Brandon, that I'm excited to hear her talk about, we'll ask her, is we've now had Bailey Nevels, Marcia Edwards, Aaron Goodson, Brett McCabe, the list goes on and on. Where's the future of this? Like, we know what's going on now, but let's talk about what does she see as the future of sports psychology, mental performance, all of those things, both from a performance standpoint and a clinical standpoint at that collegiate level, because it like anything else, it's going to get better. And I'm sure she has some thoughts around that.
Well, it's certainly going to evolve, right? I mean, I think that's one thing that we're hearing is that the practice of this is evolving, and we've talked about it before, and it's definitely someplace that I'm falling down, because I want the listeners to be able to ultimately see some of these videos of us streaming the podcast. These are really young, talented clinicians and professionals. This is not a fly-by-night fad. This is mental performance and mental acuity and flexibility for athletes is not going anywhere. This is going to be around for a while, and we've got some really, really good people steering the ship. And so I'm excited to hear what she has to say.
Absolutely. Well, we'll end it there, but can't wait for, I guess that's going to be Friday morning show. So you guys stay tuned for that guest on Friday morning, Dayna Charbonneau from WVU. And also, as we started out the show with that letter from Sydney, thanks, Sydney, shout out. Please continue to send emails in and feedback, guys. It's always nice to see those ratings come on the Apple podcast. So rate the show and then leave some comments, as always, as long as it's a positive comment. So ain't nobody have time for all the other stuff. We don't need to hear your rundown on what's wrong with our podcast.
And we definitely don't need you to label us and put value or disvalue what we're doing.
That's right. All right, man. We'll talk to you here soon.
I'll talk to you later.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Want to provide feedback or stay up to date with the show? Visit our Instagram page at Mental Advantage Podcast, or you can send us an email at podcast@mentaladvantage.net. To have John Cullen work with you or your team, please write to him at john.cullen@mentaladvantage.net. Thanks for listening to today's episode.